Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator, and on this week's Field Friday segment, thought we'd talk about the next phase of what we can be doing with our corn crop. And yeah, we're getting close to tassel time. I see as I drive around, there's a few fields starting to tassel already. Just starting to see a few, but we get into the next week or so, we're going to start seeing more. And that means fungicide time, the decision whether we want to apply fungicides and what we want to add to this corn crop for one last push towards yield. We're at that stage, like I say, we're getting close to tassel. There are some fields that aren't yet. If we want to figure out the optimum time for fungicide applications, is typically from once the tassels emerge, kind of almost through what you'd call brown silk. If you'd husk back that ear that's developing, if it looks like a sweet corn ear that you'd want to eat, that's about the end of the window. So we have a little bit of time to make that decision. But if we want to find out in your field how fast we're going to get to that tassel window, we grab the whorl, you might say, pull it out, grab it above that last collared leaf, and then we can unroll how many leaves we have that have to unroll around that tassel yet. So we basically have 3 leaves that need to unroll on this particular plant that I grabbed the whorl out of to find the tassel. Typically, maybe on average, if we get good sunshine, warm weather, decent growing conditions, probably around 2.5 days per leaf to unroll, you might say. So you're looking at, in this case, maybe 7 to 10 days is ballpark idea when this is going to tassel. This happens to be 100-day corn, planted May 2nd on good ground. Faster ground might be a little earlier corn might be a little earlier, or even some earlier planting dates. But we're just getting into that phase where we're going to start seeing planes probably buzzing maybe next week. Most of the area we've had some rains, some areas more than others, but we should have a pretty decent potential yet on a lot of this crop. So I think there's a decent amount to protect. There's several things we always talk about with fungicides. Of course, I really don't see anything showing up for leaf diseases yet. There's very little showing up for any rust, any lesions of any kind. And that's usually the case right before tassel. It's usually rare that we see a lot, maybe a little bit on the lower leaves, a little bit, but usually the diseases come in later. But the fungicides that we're generally applying give us 2 things. From the disease perspective, we need to get them on before the diseases get here, just simply because they're preventative. Once the disease is in this plant, sometimes that disease is in here into that leaf surface, and it takes a few days before you even see the damage show up. So we need to have it on ahead of that disease pressure. If we get into more dewy days or more, cooling off like it feels like the forecast is going to give us, there's some diseases that, could be coming in. We've had plenty of south winds. South winds usually blow up some things like rust. So it all depends on our weather conditions, what we might experience. The other thing that we probably get as much yield response out of in our area in general, though, unless we have a heavy disease pressure come in that we weren't, that isn't necessarily always normal, but that plant health, that greening effect that we get on the plants. So a lot of the strobularin chemistries that are part of our fungicide mix, they basically will allow that plant to basically be more efficient with water. It affects how that plant transpires moisture, and it'll affect how that plant can react to a little bit more of a dry weather period that may come back again. This plant still needs maybe 2/10 of an inch of moisture per day, so even if you get a 1/2 inch, that's only a couple of days worth of moisture. So in a lot of the area, we're not out of the woods yet for moisture. But again, we've got a decent looking corn crop here, and maybe there is some more rain in the forecast. Full disclosure, I'm hoping it's raining while you might be watching this. I'm doing this video on a Thursday, a beautiful Thursday, with the chance of rain tomorrow, which hopefully you're watching it on a Friday when it's raining. But so that's kind of the fungicide thought process. I think we've got a decent crop to protect yet. There's some, a lot of you guys have some previous history to see what we can do. If we get that plant health effect, the other thing we get is, sometimes a fringe benefit. We do get better stalk quality in the fall. What's that worth? Some years not much. Some years it's worth quite a bit. It's an intangible, but we generally see better stalk quality later in the season with the fungicide application. And then of course if diseases come in, it's even a bigger yield response. We kind of always talk corn on corn is almost a no-brainer. And then there is hybrid response, as we've talked about before. Certain hybrids respond more than others. So those are a few things to evaluate in that decision process. The other thing that we have at CFE, we've been working on a little bit the last couple of years. We've dabbled in it, but we're going a little bit deeper into the process now. We've got some yield assurances that we have. If you're applying a fungicide, we have some programs that basically it's an additional insurance policy that you can assure yourself that you're at least going to get your APH yield or a little above that with certain parameters. So that's kind of an assurance that we're not wasting our time and our money. If not, you can get some money back. We also have some discounts available with certain parameters that you can apply for some of the things that we may add to the fungicide application. So there's some details behind that. All the programs are different. Some may fit for you better than others. But I would say it'd be worth your time to visit with your CFE agronomist and see which fungicide application system might fit best for your farms. I think it's going to be worth, evaluating field by field what you want to do. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.